You think you know what is sitting in that jar in your kitchen. Golden. Thick. Innocent. Something you spread on toast without a second thought. Something you stir into tea when you want comfort on a cold night. But you are wrong. This is not just food. This is the oldest weaponized substance on Earth. The only food that never rots. The fuel that powered empires before gold existed. Before oil. Before steel. Humans have been climbing cliffs, fighting swarms, and dying for it for 40,000 years. And here is the part nobody tells you. The bees are not making it for us. They never were. We are thieves who got good at stealing. And the bill is coming due. This is the story of honey. And it is far darker, far stranger, and far more dangerous than anything you have ever drizzled into your tea. Stick around. You will never look at a spoon the same way again. Before humans learned to farm wheat or tame fire, they were already hunting honey. 40,000 years ago, in the depths of caves, early humans painted themselves climbing trees and sheer cliffs, reaching into hives while bees swarmed around them in black clouds. They were not farmers. They were thieves. And they paid for it in blood. Honey was not easy to steal. Ancient hunters faced deadly swarms, fatal falls, and infections from hundreds of stings for a single taste of gold. But they kept coming back. Generation after generation. Because honey was more than sweetness. It was pure, explosive energy. It healed wounds that nothing else could touch. It preserved meat in the heat. It fermented into mind-altering alcohol when mixed with water and left in the sun. Long before bread, long before wine, long before the wheel, there was honey. And the bravest humans on Earth were the ones willing to steal it from the sky. As empires rose from the dust, honey did not stay in the wild. It became a national industry. The Egyptians loaded tombs with jars of honey, not because of ritual, but because of hard fact. They knew something that modern laboratories only confirmed centuries later. Honey never spoils. Sealed in darkness, it lasts forever. The Egyptians used it to treat cuts, burns, and infected wounds with a success rate that shocked modern doctors. They mixed it with wine to create medicines. They accepted it as tax payment. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets record honey as a legitimate form of currency, traded alongside silver and grain. The Sumerians wrote about fermented honey drinks so potent they wiped out entire military units when consumed in excess. The Greeks and Romans carried honey into battle by the ton. It was not a treat for children. It was a military supply. Roman soldiers spread it on sword wounds to stop infection. They drank it before marching for endurance. And the wealthiest among them? They hoarded it like gold. Because in a world without sugar, honey was the only sweetness that existed. And sweetness was absolute power. But honey had a shadow side that ancient armies learned to exploit. Not all honey is innocent. In the mountains of Turkey and along the Black Sea coast, bees feed on specific rhododendron flowers and produce something called mad honey. One spoonful brings euphoria and light hallucination. 3 spoonfuls bring violent vomiting, paralysis, and death. Ancient commanders knew this. In 67 BC, Pompey the Great led his Roman legions through Turkey and found the enemy had left clay pots of honey along the road. The soldiers ate it greedily. Then they collapsed in the dirt, hallucinating, unable to lift their swords. The enemy walked through the camp and slaughtered them without resistance. Honey had become a biological weapon. And it was not the only trick humans played. Ancient beekeepers learned to use smoke to drug entire colonies, stealing their winter stores while the defenders lay stunned and confused. The relationship between humans and bees was never a partnership. It was a war of extraction. And for thousands of years, the bees were losing ground. By the Middle Ages, honey had become the silent backbone of the European economy. Monasteries across England and France kept massive apiaries not for charity, but for cold profit. They produced wax for cathedral candles and honey for mead, the alcoholic drink that fueled Viking longship raids and sealed medieval treaties between kings. In England, honey was so valuable that royal laws were written specifically to protect hives from theft. Peasants paid their landlords in jars of honey. Kings taxed it at border crossings. And when European explorers finally reached the Americas, they expected to find cities of gold. Instead, they found native peoples who had already mastered advanced beekeeping with stingless species, harvesting honey that tasted of wild jungle flowers and rain. But the New World also held a secret that would eventually destroy honey forever. A tall grass. A tropical plant. Something sweeter, cheaper, and easier to mass-produce than anything the bees could create. And once that plant took root in the Caribbean, honey was no longer king. That plant was sugarcane. And when European powers cracked the code of mass production using enslaved labor in brutal Caribbean plantations, honey became obsolete almost overnight. Sugar was cheaper. Sugar was more versatile. Sugar did not require dangerous cliff climbs or smoky midnight battles with angry swarms. It only required human suffering on an industrial scale. Honey retreated into the shadows of history. It became a luxury for the wealthy, a folk medicine for the poor, and a fading memory of the ancient world. By the 1800s, honey was nearly forgotten in the industrial age. Factories pumped out white crystals by the millions of tons, and the ancient golden food became a curiosity sold at country markets. But honey was not gone. It was waiting in the wings. Because nature does not forget its own inventions. And the bees were about to face a threat that no amount of smoke, no wall, and no human trick could ever stop. Today, honey is a lie. Walk into any supermarket and pick up a jar with a picture of a meadow on the label. There is a good chance it is not honey at all. Global supply chains are flooded with counterfeit product, cut with corn syrup, rice syrup, and synthetic chemicals designed to fool laboratory tests. The real thing is now so rare that scientists use nuclear isotope testing to verify its origin. Meanwhile, the bees themselves are collapsing. Colony collapse disorder has wiped out billions of bees across North America and Europe. Pesticides, monoculture farming, and industrial pollination have turned the ancient relationship between humans and bees into a one-way death march. Ancient honey pulled from Egyptian tombs is still perfectly edible after 3,000 years. But the modern bee may not survive the next 50. We built a civilization that replaced the real thing with counterfeit sweetness. And now the original source is vanishing while we pretend not to notice. So the next time you see that golden jar on a shelf, remember what it really represents. It is the oldest preserved food on earth. It is the weapon that brought down armies in the mountains of Turkey. It is the currency that built monasteries, funded Viking raids, and paid the wages of Roman soldiers marching into the unknown. It is the only thing in your kitchen that will outlast you, your children, and possibly civilization itself. But only if the bees survive. And right now, that survival is not guaranteed. The story of honey is not a story about sweetness. It is a story about survival, theft, and the brutal cost of taking too much from a world that does not owe us anything. The question is not whether honey will last forever. It will. The question is whether we will last long enough to deserve it. Think about that the next time you open a jar.